One day they're in your life, the next, nothing. If you are watching this, you are that story. You're the one who disappeared. No argument, no dramatic exit, no explanation. You just stopped. And here's what nobody will say to your face. You didn't snap. You didn't give up. You didn't fail at relationships. You reached a threshold. And when you hit it, something in you made a decision so clean, so final, it surprised even you. Let's talk about why that happens, and why the people it happens to are rarely who you think they are. Think about the last person you cut off, not the dramatic falling out, not the person you argued with for months before finally walking away, the quiet one, the relationship you simply ended. No scene, no closure. You just stopped being available. Now think about who you were before that moment. You were probably the reliable one, the one who answered, the one who showed up. You were the person who remembered birthdays, who checked in, who absorbed tension so everyone else could stay comfortable. You gave and you gave and you gave until one day you looked at your phone, saw a name, and felt nothing except the quiet desire for them to stop calling. That moment wasn't cruelty. That was the end of a very long depletion. Psychologists have a name for what happens in the nervous system of a person who suddenly withdraws. Dr. Stephen Porges' Polyvagal Theory describes 3 states the nervous system moves between: safety, fight or flight, and shutdown. Most people assume the people who go quiet choose shutdown because they're weak or cold. The research says the opposite. Shutdown, the dorsal vagal response, is an ancient survival mechanism. It activates when the nervous system has processed threats so many times that it stops fighting and starts conserving. In simple terms, your body decided the energy cost of those relationships was no longer survivable. This wasn't a mood. It wasn't pettiness. It was your nervous system doing precisely what it was built to do, protecting your capacity to function. But why does your nervous system have this trigger when other people seem to tolerate the same relationships without blinking? For most people who go through sudden social withdrawal, the answer starts long before adulthood. Developmental psychologist John Bowlby spent decades studying attachment, the way children bond with caregivers. He found that children who grow up in environments where love is unpredictable don't become cold. They become hypervigilant. They learn to read the room before they can read a book. They sense tension before the first word is spoken. They become emotional experts because their survival once depended on it. And here's what happens to that child when they become an adult. They enter relationships already wired to detect when someone's energy is costing more than it's giving. They tolerate more than most because they were trained to. And when they finally stop tolerating, the cutoff is total. Not because they're cruel, because partial withdrawal was never an option they learned. It was always either give everything or leave completely. Now, here's where it gets important to be honest. Not every sudden cutoff is healthy. The CDC reports that prolonged social isolation raises your risk of heart disease by 29%. Cognitive decline accelerates. Physical health deteriorates. The research is unambiguous. Humans need genuine connection. So there's a question you have to ask yourself, and I want you to actually sit with this one. Is this protection, or is it avoidance dressed as protection? Because they feel almost identical in the moment. That's what makes this hard. Both feel like relief. Both feel like finally being able to breathe. Both feel justified. Because honestly, in most cases, the people you cut off did something to earn it. But there's a version of withdrawal that isn't about peace. It's about control. It's about never being in a position where someone can hurt you again. And that version doesn't just cut off the people who drained you. It eventually cuts off everyone who gets close enough to matter. Ask yourself this: is your silence selective, or is it expanding? Because one of those is a boundary, and the other is a pattern that will quietly take everything from you while feeling like wisdom. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Personality found that people with high emotional sensitivity scores were significantly more likely to report preemptive withdrawal, meaning they left before they could be left, not because the relationship was harmful, but because closeness itself had become the threat. That's the line between protection and pattern. Let's talk about the other side of this, because if you've cut people off, there are people sitting somewhere right now who don't understand what happened. Some of them hurt you in ways they never fully grasped. Some were careless, not out of malice, but out of the blindness that comes from never having to be the one who holds everything together. But some of them were just close, and close was enough to become dangerous. Those people didn't fail you. You just didn't have the architecture to stay. This isn't guilt. I'm not asking you to call them. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying knowing the difference matters, because the story you tell yourself about why you left shapes whether you ever believe connection is safe at all. If everyone you cut off was toxic, you don't have to examine anything. But if somewhere on that list there are people who simply loved you in a way your nervous system didn't know how to receive, that's worth sitting with. Here's the quiet cost that doesn't get talked about enough. People who are wired this way, the ones who give everything until they suddenly give nothing, they are often the most perceptive people in any room. The most emotionally intelligent, the most capable of deep connection, and they are also frequently the loneliest. Because the same sensitivity that makes them extraordinary in relationships is the same sensitivity that makes relationships feel like too much. They want depth. But depth requires vulnerability. And vulnerability requires a nervous system that believes it will survive being truly known. So they find themselves in a strange loop, craving closeness while quietly engineering distance, getting close, feeling the heat, and pulling back before it can burn them. Researcher Brené Brown describes this as a vulnerability hangover, the emotional aftermath of letting someone in, followed by the urgent need to armor back up. For most people, that feeling passes. For someone with this wiring, it can trigger the entire withdrawal sequence, and the result is a life that looks from the outside like it's full of people, but feels from the inside like standing behind glass. So what do you actually do with this? Not a 5-step plan, not a fix, just what do you do? The first thing is naming it. Stop calling it, "I just don't need people," and start calling it what it is. A protection strategy that once kept you safe and now sometimes keeps you isolated. Because "I don't need people" is a closed door. "I learned not to need people" is a door that can open. The second thing is tolerating ambiguity. The urge to cut off completely often spikes hardest at the exact moment a relationship is asking you to be honest. Before you go quiet, just once, ask yourself if the relationship is actually harmful, or if it's just arrived at the moment where it would require you to be real. Sometimes it's harmful. Leave. But sometimes it's just intimacy. And intimacy asks for things that feel unbearable to people who learned that needing someone was a liability. The third thing is finding one relationship where you practice staying, where you notice the urge to disappear, and if it's genuinely safe, you choose to say something instead. You don't have to explain your entire history. Just say, "I go quiet when things feel like too much. I'm trying not to do that right now." Think of it like updating software. The old code was written for survival. It ran every time someone got close, scanning for threat, calculating cost, preparing the exit. And it worked. It kept you functioning when functioning was hard. But you're not running on survival anymore. You're running on choice. And choice means you can feel the pull to disappear and decide, consciously, to stay in the room instead. Not because it's comfortable, but because you wrote the new code. And the new code knows the difference between danger and depth. You are not broken because you cut people off. You are not cold. You are not a bad friend. You are not someone who doesn't deserve connection. You are someone who learned very early that connection came with a cost, and your nervous system became exceptional at calculating whether that cost was survivable. That was a gift once. It protected you. The work now, if you want it, is slowly teaching that system that not every close person is a threat, that not every moment of need is a warning sign, that some people, in some relationships, can be trusted with the parts of you that you've kept very, very quiet. You don't have to cut everyone off to stay safe. Sometimes, the safest thing you can ever do is stay. And if this resonated with you, if you saw yourself somewhere in this video, take a second to subscribe, like, comment, and share. It helps more people find content like this. And honestly, someone in your life probably needs to hear this today.